I'm Annie Lee. I'm an Energy and Transportation Planner with Triangle J Council of Governments. I am also the co-director for our Triangle's Clean Cities Coalition, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our role with that and the North Carolina Clean Transportation Plan. We're gonna hope that this is not mine. I'm not sure what my presentation is, so we're going to wing it a little bit. The North Carolina Clean Transportation Plan came out in February of 2022. But I can't tell you about the Clean Transportation Plan without you understanding the context and the need for it. We're up and running. So, again, I can't tell you about this without you understanding what came before. I used to work for the Division of Air Quality. The Division of Air Quality released our reports to EPA, and it actually came back and we discovered that the #1 source of greenhouse gases for the state of North Carolina was no longer our energy sector, which is fantastic. Kudos to North Carolina for getting that much renewable energy. And also a lot of more efficiency. What we did discover and learn was that now our transportation sector was our #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions, which was very timely with the bill coming out with the bipartisan infrastructure law, which predicated or preceded the Clean Transportation Plan for a lot of reasons. For one, the opportunity within the bill specifically states that it's a reality of funding to decrease the transportation emissions specific to carbon dioxide, which is the #1 thing that North Carolina is looking to do within our transportation sector. It met our North Carolina needs really, really well. And so we're able to tap into this funding specifically for that reason. There's also the aspect North Carolina is about 75% rural. We have 3 urban centers, but the majority of our state is underserved and needs a lot of help if we're talking about electrification. So the fact that the DOT has released an online toolkit for rural communities to be able to access so that local communities, local governments can start looking at how they're going to electrify their region and better serve their impoverished and underserved populations is really, really important. And it is a huge stepping stone for North Carolina to be able to step into a cleaner transportation system. They're also looking really, really creatively, or there's programs within this to look really creatively at microtransits and how can we even have ride shares with electric vehicles? How can we provide more secure transportation for those that don't have secure transportation already? Because they're spending so much money in gasoline, or their vehicles are old and break down a lot. They simply don't have access. So this part of the bipartisan infrastructure law helps a lot with these really, really insecure arenas. And North Carolina, with us being predominantly rural, has a lot of these issues. So all of this helped to give rise to the Clean Transportation Plan and what we feel like is something that is, while very ambitious, is also achievable. So another part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, in case you aren't familiar with it, is the NEVI program formula. But the point of the NEVI program is to provide reliable charging across the United States, across major highway corridors. So we are trying, it is $5 billion that is being deployed for EV charging infrastructure across the entire country. What is fantastic about this is that the goal is to increase vehicle adoption, electric vehicle adoption. How many of you have been in an electric vehicle and suddenly worried if you're going to actually make it to your destination? How many of you have stopped at a charger and the port doesn't work and the maintenance is crap, sorry, right? It's a big issue, and so a big portion of what the NEVI formula is doing is trying to provide, or no, it's not trying to provide, as it rolls out, we'll continue to provide infrastructure across the nation so that we actually have reliable charging infrastructure. Now, the first phase of this is all focusing on highway corridors, and there are specific requirements for that corridor, meaning that there has to be a charging station every 50 miles. That charging station cannot be more than a mile off of that interstate. Now this is, again, just for those high traffic areas. We're not getting into communities and stuff yet. That's going to be rolling out with phase 2. Another big thing about the NEVI funding is that you have to explain how you're going to get the electricity from the grid actually transformed and available to a vehicle. There has to be regular maintenance involved so that you don't wind up as one of the poor people that can't actually charge your vehicle when you finally make it to one and you're not worried about being stuck on the side of the road. But at the same time, this has just really started rolling out. But we're very excited about it. Actually, as of today, some of the NEVI has been released as some designated corridors already. Now, how does this tie back, again, to North Carolina? It's the ability to travel. It's the ability to have safe, reliable travel as we move across our state. North Carolina doesn't have much mass transportation, especially when you're talking about the triangle. So being able to move us to electric vehicles is really a game changer. Within the North Carolina Clean Transportation Plan, when this came out, the goal was to have an actual functioning plan within 15 months. We have 4 key groups that are, well, 4 large groups, I should say, that are working together. One is the advisory group, that's 18 people. They are in charge of the strategic direction. We have our stakeholder groups. This is very, very broad and diverse. And the whole point of them was to get as many questions as possible. What are our community needs? How are we going to work together? Who really are the stakeholders that might not normally get a platform or that we don't typically hear from? Then we had our designated work groups that were more specialized. And I'll explain that more in just a second. And then there was really targeted outreach. This really focused with our Environmental Justice Board. Cities, this is also where our education piece comes in, because if people don't understand the need for this or why it's even here, if you didn't know that our #1 source of greenhouse gases in North Carolina is, and how rural we are, you might not appreciate the whole reason for why this is a big deal for our state. So within this, we have our ZEV plan, which is zero-emission vehicles. Now that can be electric, that can also be hydrogen. That can be, as long as there's literally no emission coming out of a tailpipe, falls under this category. Then we also have our medium heavy-duty ZEV action plans, our fleet transition plans. Fleets are huge. We have I-95, we have Interstate 40, we have a lot of fleets, we have a lot of ports as well that come through, that transport a lot across our state. VNT task force, this is vehicle miles traveled. So this is also encouraging other forms of transportation, whether that be walking, whether that be biking, whether that's e-bikes, whether that's scooters. We're trying to reduce the number of miles that are traveled that, again, are creating more emissions or that aren't as clean. Where we fall in, or where my job primarily is, again, is in the clean transportation infrastructure. So I am heavy in looking at where are chargers going to go, how are we going to get them established, how are we going to get them into communities, where is funding going to come from. While there is the NEVI formula, there's also other community needs that need to be considered too. Give you an idea, this is our charging infrastructure in 2011. It's basically non-existent. Here's our charging infrastructure as of 2017. A lot more promising. You can definitely see where our urban cities are. You can see where Charlotte is very clearly. You can see where the Triangle is. You can see where the Triad is. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see where we have Asheville. Now, what's exciting is, is when you look at 2021. You can start to see a lot more EV adoption across the state. You're starting to see a lot more reliable infrastructure. What is an issue is that most of the time, the folks that are in the urban cities that are buying your electric vehicles want to vacation in either the mountains or the coast. And while the coast is starting to pop up with a decent amount of infrastructure, how are you going to get there if you cannot stop and charge? So again, this clean transportation plan is comprehensive, and they're looking at all of the different scenarios as much as we possibly can to make electric vehicles, alternative fuel vehicles a reality. So as of yesterday, we are right now at September of 2022, where the plan is to be approved by the Joint Office. Yesterday, all of our groups met together. Honestly, I was on a plane during that meeting, so I don't know exactly what shook out all of that. However, I'm excited to find out about it. But this is the moment where we start getting actual teeth in the plan, where thoughts start becoming more actionable. So I'm excited to see how the next bit rolls out. Stay tuned. With the NEVI formula, let me get this right. The NEVI compliant stations are the one in blue. I should also mention, and I forgot to mention this before, the NEVI plan is not a competition, it's an allotment of funds. So there is not it's an allocation based off of need. It's not the competition that you're typically used to thinking of when you're talking about applying for grants, or who's gonna get it, or who's gonna get this money, or who's not going to get the money. It is truly, we need to have infrastructure that is reliable for our EVs across the nation. And therefore, that shouldn't be a competition if we're trying to build a new way. Currently, with the Clean Transportation Plan, I'm part of the education side, and so we're actively moving programs across the state right now to educate, to ask questions, to meet with fleet managers, find out what the needs are, and again, make sure that they understand why this is occurring and why the transition is important. Now, as I mentioned, I'm also co-director of Triangle Clean Cities. We are we're housed within Triangle J Council of Government, which is why I wear kind of two hats that are also very similar. We do a lot of education and outreach about all alternative fuels. We are not fuel specific, we are fuel neutral, but we are very kind of anti-petroleum. So we're trying to move into this clean direction. We stay on top of what's going on. We are alternative fuel experts. Not Triangle Clean Cities, the Clean Cities Coalition is funded by the Department of Energy and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. We have direct contact with them all the time, and we receive constant training. Coalitions cover 80% of the United States, of the population of the United States. So wherever you are, whatever state you are in, there is a coalition nearby that can assist you. So this slide says we are a resource. We are a massive resource. But more than that, we are also matchmakers. We know our regions, we know where we are, we know our local governments, we know who needs what. And so a lot of times we have fleet managers coming to us saying, we're interested in this kind of fuel, and we can go, oh, okay, well, we can partner you with this provider. So, think of Hitch from back in like 2005, where, you find out exactly what your personality profile is, and let's match you up with exactly who matches your personality profile. It's a little more entertaining that way. We also are great, because we work with DOE, we can provide you with funding, or we can line you up with the best funding that works for you, and we can help with concept papers. We can be the name on those concept papers. We're also fantastic because we are a third party and we are neutral. We get to celebrate you. We get to communicate about you. We get to celebrate you on social media and webinars. We also have podcasts and things that are publicized over DOE that we can utilize. We like to report your success, and actually part of our job is to report your success. So any fleet that, for instance, goes from diesel to compressed natural gas, we summarize how much greenhouse gas emissions or gallons of gas that's saved, and that's reported directly to DOE, goes to Congress, and also helps with more funding. So there's a lot of benefit to working with the Clean Cities Coalition. Triangle Clean Cities specifically has been around for 20 years. On the left here is the gallons of gasoline equivalent that has been reduced. And then on the other side is our greenhouse gas emissions that we have reduced as well, or not been put into the atmosphere. Going back to the federal level, obviously roads don't stop at state lines. We have to work together. So I think we're year 2. Drive Electric, before NEVI, Drive Electric USA became a program, again by US DOE. This is a partnership that originally started across 14 states to help bridge those gaps in electric vehicle infrastructure. So currently, there's 32 that are either in the process of signing on or have signed on. But the whole point, again, is are y'all familiar with EV clubs? right? People are really, really passionate about their electric vehicles. So there's EV clubs that we help organize that come together to help celebrate, ride and drive events. But this is primarily about educating at the state and local level, as well as making sure that our roads cross well. Again, this is another way to get fleet engagement and adoption. So again, this is going back to our stats. So at the moment, we have 32 that are in process or coming on. I'm going to wrap up with this. At the moment, since this is the Southeast, this is currently what is in place for an alternative fuel corridor for the entire Southeast. This includes natural gas. This is not limited to electric vehicles. But I think it's very telling that change is not coming, change is here. And we need to work together more and overcome the issues that have been mentioned umpteen million times. Because it's here and the future is now. So thank you so much for having me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Yes. That is a fantastic question. I've heard some of the research about it. I've heard that I'm not the best person to ask specifically about it. I could point you in the right direction. I could talk to our subject matter experts and get back in touch with you. Yes, sir. Pardon? We're allowed to, not so much. We are allowed to sit in, we are allowed to understand what's going on, and we do, but as far as trying to sway in any way or coerce, that is not our position, no. All right, thank you.